Hi, and welcome to the End Times Guide podcast. My name is Lee, your blue collar, no account, no credentialed truck driver who is not a minister either. I don't have the power to minister the gospel within myself. There's nothing good within me whatsoever. It is only the power of God that declares the truth. Jesus Christ is the light which came into the world. And if there's any light that emanates from this podcast, it is Jesus Christ. And we have to return glory to him. To turn around and honor one another is really blind and foolish. To elevate any person as if they themselves are a minister is also foolish. And in the end times, we really have to be careful not to honor one another. We're natural, we're designed to worship. And that's why we have sports stars and music stars and movie stars and political stars, and we elevate one another all the time. And in our hearts, we're always seeking to be elevated. And that is the poison that we find in human nature. And I've covered in prior podcasts what human nature is. It's the spirit that is in the world. What am I talking about? I believe it's in Colossians. Paul defines it. The spirit that is in the world, it's not from the Father. It's called the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the boastful pride of life. That spirit is in every human being born on this planet. Well, how did it get there? A spirit enters us through covenant. In the beginning, God made a covenant with Adam and Eve. It was a beautiful covenant. It was the covenant of a loving father towards his children. And when I look at my children, I can see myself wanting the same things for them. It's a covenant of love. He says to them, be fruitful and multiply. I want my children to have a good life, to have children of their own to love and hold, and to bring me grandbabies. I want grandbabies. And the second part of the covenant was to give them the land. I'm giving you the land and everything in it. It's yours. I want you to enjoy it. I gave my younger daughter my house because I don't want to live for the things of the world, and I don't want her to struggle as I had to struggle to have a home. I paid rent for over 20 some years. And, rent was the bulk of my income, and it's basically money over your shoulder. And it left us always in a financial bind. We never had 2 cents to rub together. It was most of the times barely enough to pay the bills. Some bills did go unpaid at times, which I thank God for, because you don't grow proud and haughty and wise in your own eyes. It really has a way of maintaining humility and meekness within you. It was a good thing. But the third part of the covenant, I will be your God and you will be my people. This is the covenant that God established with Adam and Eve. And in this covenant, God's spirit was in Adam and Eve. And God's spirit, the fruits of it, we all know: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. When God entered the garden in the cool of the day to walk with them, they went running towards God. Their eyes were bright and shiny. They were excited to see their Father. This is the relationship that man had with God. And apart from sin, apart from the fall, this is the relationship you and I were designed to have as Adam and Eve's descendants. We should be running towards God, Abba, Father, our arms open wide, our eyes shiny, our just big, stupid grins plastered across our faces, and in our hearts, a sincere love, a sincere joy. We don't need drugs. We don't need food. We don't need fancy cars. Joy came from God, and we were filled with it. Giggling and shiny-faced, running towards our Father, because you know what? A lot of days, he would bring a surprise with him, because what is God love? God is love, and love is putting yourself second and others ahead of you. And I can picture the Father of lights coming into the garden with some new creation, some new surprise. not because he wanted to show off his power and ability and make sure they were aware of his glory. That's not what God is like. Because he wanted to see their joy. He wanted to see their excitement. He wanted to see their delight. So he would present to them some furry little critter he had designed. It's just so adorable, it melts your heart. We can still see a remnant of that in the offspring of the animals today. They aren't so cute and adorable and pleasing to us by accident. This is the very hand of God, a gift to us, and it brings us joy and delight, even to this very day. So that's how we were designed. That's what covenant with God brought to us. And then there was a new voice in the garden seeking to establish a new covenant. And he came in and he called God a liar and said, if you will eat from the tree, you yourselves, you humans will be like God. And I want you to understand that before Eve ever bit from the fruit, you can see for yourself that the spirit of the new covenant entered her. As she broke covenant, now in covenant, God's enemies are her enemies. She should not be listening to the serpent. She knows that this is God's enemy and she should not be listening to him, but she does. And therefore breaks covenant with God. As she's listening to the serpent, as her heart is getting in agreement with the serpent, she broke covenant with God and a new spirit entered her, the spirit of the world. Before she ever ate the fruit, she had died. The spirit of God had left her and a new spirit had entered her body. Now you can see that for yourself in Genesis chapter 3, where she looks upon the fruit. And get this, read it for yourself, see it with your own eyes, and know with your heart that this is true. She looks upon it that it is pleasing to the eye. That's called lust of the eyes. She sees that it is good for food. That is called lust of the flesh. And she discerns that it is good for making one wise. That is called the boastful pride of life. The spirit of the world is now in Eve before she ever committed the sin. So, but greater than her breaking of God's law, there is something greater at play. There is a spirit given authority in her life through covenant, and that is Satan, Lucifer, the great deceiver. He made covenant with a woman that day, and his spirit manifested itself in her. And from the time of Eve until the time of Christ, man has had this spirit within him. And then Jesus Christ entered into the world and spoke a new word. And only Jesus Christ has the ability to set us free from the old covenant, the old spirit. Jesus spoke, and to those who listened and obeyed was given a new spirit, the Spirit of God. The same spirit that was in Adam and Eve, the same spirit that made them love, the same spirit that filled them with joy, the same spirit that caused them to run towards the Father with their arms wide and their faces shining. That is the spirit put inside of those who trust in Christ. And this is why Christ says, as many as are led by the Spirit of God, these are the children of God, because they no longer walk in the old spirit of the world. Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, boastful pride of life is eradicated in those who have put their faith in Christ. Don't be assured of your salvation because you go to church. Don't be assured of your salvation because you read the Bible and pray. Don't be assured of your salvation because the pastor told you you were saved. Be assured of your salvation in this, that the Spirit of God is in you, that you run towards the Father, that your face is shiny, that your heart is bursting with love, and that you cry in your heart, Abba, Father. There is no guilt separating you from his presence any longer. You see, Adam and Eve, once they had received the spirit of the world, behaved very differently. Their deeds were different. They fled from God. God entered the garden and they scurried away like rats. That is the fruit of the Spirit of the world. When the sky rolls up like a scroll and Jesus Christ is presented to us, King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the deceivers and liars and hypocrites will scatter like rats because the guilt in their hearts will cause them to do so. And in that moment, they will expose themselves. But those who have put their hope in Jesus Christ will turn to the light and scream with joy, Abba, Father, and will run towards the light because they know the truth and the truth has made them free. This is the gospel we proclaim. And as the Apostle Paul says, if anyone proclaims any other gospel than this, let him be accursed. Because the gospel is the power of God for salvation. Not our learning, our wisdom, our discipleship training classes, or anything else. It is the Spirit of God within us. And I pray, it is my deepest heart's desire. It is the desire of God that you in this time know what that joy feels like, know what that innocence feels like. I want to say adamantly that there is nothing good that lives within me. Of my own strength, you and I are no different whatsoever. You and I live in fleshly caves, but the Spirit of God is willing to come in. And if the Spirit of God abides with us, He releases us from slavery to sin. He puts His Spirit in us and He causes us by His power to walk in this world in righteousness as children of God. I am being held in a place of grace, and I'll tell you what, I know if God ever lets go, I will fall and I will be a sinner like everyone else. It's not me. I have no power or authority over sin. But as long as God holds me up in grace, I will rejoice and give thanks to Him. And I hope and pray that is your delight as well. These are the end times. Deception is woven into the fabric of humanity far and wide. And innumerable are those who walk after the flesh. We cannot walk in the same manner. We have to be prepared in our hearts that when Jesus, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, stands before us in purity and holiness, that we are not driven away from the light, but that we run towards it because it is the light that we desire in our hearts. God bless you. Take care.